Kusampo, and welcome to BBS. Today I'm joined by the ambassador, the Australian ambassador to Bhutan, Harinder Sidhu. Ambassador Sidhu was appointed as the new ambassador of Australia to Bhutan, I think just yesterday. This is her first trip to Bhutan in her capacity as the ambassador of Australia to Bhutan. Thank you for taking time to talk to us.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I'm very happy to be here.
And we'd like to welcome you to Bhutan.
Thank you so much.
Well, you're here for your first time. I mean, this is your first trip to Bhutan. And you've come here with good news. We actually saw that with the opening of the, making it possible for Bhutanese to process the visas from the VFS office in Thimphu. But wasn't this something that already existed, Ambassador?
Well, I actually see this morning's opening of the Visa Assessment Centre as a very significant milestone in the Australia-Bhutan relationship. We've had for many decades now Bhutanese travelling to Australia to visit, to work, to study, but they've always had to get their visas from another place, most usually New Delhi. That involved a lot of time and a lot of expense. So the fact that we have now established this centre, it means that Bhutanese can apply for their visas at the centre, or if they apply online, they can go to the centre to have their biometrics collected, and they don't have to go out of the country. It greatly reduces the cost and the inconvenience of getting a visa, and I think it really does mark a new stage of development, a new phase in the relationship. It significantly makes it easier. There is no change to the, can I be clear, there is no change to the nature of the visa or anything else. It essentially produces much more convenience for Bhutanese people.
So it is going to make a lot of difference, because we understood that it wasn't really having to go in physical to the nearest embassy in order to process and get your Australian visa. Was that the case?
Well, you used to have to do it online, but also we were moving towards collecting biometrics for the future phases of how we issue visas, and that would have introduced a great deal of inconvenience. So this genuinely makes it a lot simpler. There is an Australian authorised office that can manage the visas, and Bhutanese can go and go face to face with people if they wish. They still can apply online. That's the important point.
So the people can still apply it online. And even if you applied it through the VFS office here, the details would still have to go to the Australian High Commission, because they couldn't just give it on the spot.
It is essentially an assessment centre, an application centre. It's not an Australian immigration office, that is true, but it does produce a great deal more convenience for
I asked this question because it's, like you said, it comes as good news. Plus, we have still a lot of Bhutanese wanting to go to Australia, either to study or work or for tourism purposes, and we would like to come back to this thing, to this part of maybe later on in the interview. But while we're on the subject, it might be interesting to get some head counts of how many Bhutanese would actually be there at the moment, studying or working or as spouses.
Okay. Oh well, that's very difficult. That's a very difficult number to. So if I can put it this way, we process something like about 1,200 to 1,400 visas for Bhutanese travelling to Australia every year. That's for a variety of purposes. It's not just for study or for spouses, but that's for everything. And that's been a pretty steady number for a number of years now. Currently, I don't have exact numbers of students, but since 2007, under the Australia Awards scholarships, we have sent 343 Bhutanese students to Australia under that scholarship program. To various studies. Then we have another competitive fellowships known as the Endeavour Fellowships. Currently there are, in 2016, 30 people travelling to Australia under those programs. And in the area of skills training and vocational training, in 2015, 452 Bhutanese travelled to Australia to undertake vocational training in various ways. So there are a number of layers of studying and skills training that is underway, and the numbers are quite large. Last year there were 52 Australians Bhutanese that travelled to Australia under the Australian Awards program.
But like you said, in general, there's like at least 1,200 to 1,400 Bhutanese
people, for various reasons.
For various reasons, including the scholarships.
Including the scholarship.
Thank you. There was this time, back to the visa thing, when unfortunately a few Bhutanese had their visas cancelled for violating some of the immigration rules. And we understand, maybe not, but we understand that since then the way visas are issued for Bhutanese, whether it's for tourism or study or any other purpose, was more scrutinized in great detail. We have a new ambassador here speaking to us for the first time, and maybe we want to, I don't know if you mind telling us if the scrutiny behind issuing visa would remain the same, or maybe would become a little generous.
So let me just put this back as a practical point. In terms of student visas, what Australians do, we like the Bhutanese are very practical people. We recognise that if you go to a country to study, there are expenses involved in all of that. Yeah. So we have actually quite open rules, but we do have rules around allowing students to undertake some work to help support them while they are studying. Right. That's seen as one of the more generous provisions in student visas by any country in the world, to be honest. But those visas come with a set of rules. And so I guess my message to people going to Australia to study is that we've taken a very practical approach to the visa, we've taken a very practical approach to the visa conditions, but I would advise people to learn what those conditions are and to stay within those conditions. They are fairly generous conditions by world standards, and we think there should be no difficulty with people adhering to those conditions while they're in Australia.
Thank you very much. We'll take a little break from the visa and the serious matters. Australia is one of Bhutan's oldest development partners. I think Australia has always assisted Bhutan's development path in a lot of ways, the most prominent one being the education sector, like we just talked about. How, according to you, is the future of the two countries going to be?
Oh, I see the future very bright. The education relationship dates back to 1962. It's a very old relationship. Under the Colombo Plan, Australia accepted Bhutanese students from as far back as that. So it's more than 50 years old. It has formed the bedrock of our relationship. It is also the basis, I think, of enormous goodwill between the Bhutanese people and the Australian people. So we have a very good foundation to build on, and I think it will remain the centerpiece of our relationship going forward. But now what we're seeing is that diversifying into a number of areas. So if we just stay with education for a minute, I've mentioned skills training and technical training in addition to the university training. So that's one dimension. Another dimension has been what we're calling the new Colombo Plan, where we send Australian students to Bhutan. So it's become two ways. Australian students are coming to Bhutan to study or to undertake internships, so they gain and broaden their experience. And this, I think, takes our relationship to the next step. We also have a volunteers program where Australian volunteers with expertise come to Bhutan and work, work in and bring their expertise in specific areas like health or agriculture, a whole bunch of other areas. So there are so many layers. We're also seeing a lot of cooperation starting to develop in agriculture, in hydroelectric power. And there are a number of areas, and I honestly think there is a lot of scope yet for our relationship to grow.
Yeah, like you said, education is just the basis, and the two countries are actually exploring in numerous sectors, which has already started. Correct. Yeah. Thank you. When we talk about assistance in the education sector, I think most of us are thinking only about scholarships that Australia grants Bhutan, maybe either to do the diplomas, degrees, or their masters or PhDs. But we also understood I don't know whether it's a new thing, but I just knew it today, that Australia has actually been indirectly supporting the World Food Programme assistance in the rural schools of Bhutan. And however, the Australia awards to study in 2016, which is this year, was kind of paused for about a year, owing to your country's own financial situation. Now, Ambassador, is this something that this will resume?
I can assure you that it will resume in 2017. The Australia Awards is a signature program for us, and it's been a keystone of our relationship with Bhutan. So the pause is only temporary, and I want to emphasize a couple of things about the awards. We have made the awards much more flexible over recent years. So it used to be only for long-term study. You can now obtain Australia Awards to study in Australia for short periods of time. And this allows working professionals to go to Australia for a 6-week course or a 2-month course and undertake an intensive course of study also under the Australian Awards. So when it resumes next year, it will definitely be continuing. The other point to bear in mind is, even though there's a pause, we continue to support those students under the Australia Award who are continuing in Australia this year. So, you know, it is a continuing relationship, and that's the main thing to remember.
But how does this work, Ambassador? The slots were already announced in 2015, so the candidates who were shortlisted from 2015 would actually get to be enrolled in 2017.
I think that will have to be considered on a case-by-case basis, but well, I'll have to investigate that a bit.
But the
further.
number of slots that the Australian government gives would remain the same, or anything like going up and down?
So the number of slots in the Australia Awards over the last few years has always changed from year to year. And that's dependent on a whole bunch of factors to have to do with how we plan and program. So what I can guarantee you is that there will be slots next year for Bhutan. I can't be specific about how many, because a lot of those decisions about how many slots we have come out of our budgetary process, and we haven't had that process yet. So I'm not in a position to tell you at the moment.
But it's still good news to know that it's going to come true anyways. Back to Bhutan and Australia's relations. The two countries enjoy warm and very cordial relations since we started the diplomatic ties sometime in 2002. What has our new ambassador got to say about the relations between the two countries? Well, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I am very impressed by the quality of the relationship. It is a very strong relationship. It is well grounded. It has enough history in it. There are many people in Bhutan in important positions who have experience of Australia, so they don't just have an idea of Australia, they have visited, they have experienced and studied it, so they understand who we are as Australians. And that's incredibly valuable when you're trying to forge a relationship with another country. So I'm coming in as ambassador to a very well-developed relationship. It's a relationship that can only grow and deepen over time. I'm genuinely hopeful that under my tenure, that I'll be able to take that forward. I'm looking forward to exploring new fields, for example, in terms of environmental cooperation, going forward, or in agricultural cooperation. So I'm looking at lots of new fields.
Plus the already existing sectors like we just talked about, education, agriculture, health in the form of volunteers.
Correct.
But because you've just taken up the new role as the ambassador, have you already thought about some priorities that you might be considering or focusing on?
So yes, I'm certainly looking at areas where we can work together, for example, in cooperation on the civil service and transferring some of our expertise there and sharing our experiences with the Bhutanese civil service so it can become more effective. While Australia seems to have quite a large population, by global terms we also have quite a small population. So we focus on doing things as efficiently as possible with as few people as possible. And Bhutan takes the same approach. So in many fields of industry or civil service, we are trying to do things in Australia that is most efficient. And we think that we can share that approach with Bhutan, and I'm really looking forward to taking that forward.
Thank you. Just one last question, Ambassador. Besides being known as an important diplomatic figure for yourself, you're also known as a very, senior environment kind of a specialist, a climate change official. Do you think there is anything that Bhutan and Australia can work together when it comes to environment conservation policies and the climate?
It's really struck me that there are areas where we can probably cooperate. I'm thinking, since I've got here, about the sorts of things we might be able to do, and I hope to develop those thoughts further. I want to really commend Bhutan and the government of Bhutan for its leadership on climate change in the world. It goes to show that you don't have to be a big or a very rich country to show leadership in this space. Bhutan is a model for many countries in terms of the concern and care you have for your environment. The challenge that Bhutan faces, as Australia does, is how do you balance care for the environment and the climate with economic development. And I think that's the area where Australia and Bhutan can possibly share some thinking and some experience. So I'll be thinking about how we can take that forward.
And as a foreigner, what is your view on Bhutan's philosophy of gross national happiness?
Well, I think it's a very commendable philosophy. I think every government, even if they don't articulate it, tries to nurture and develop the well-being and happiness of their people. What is remarkable about Bhutan is that they have articulated this, and you, Bhutanese, have put this into words. You have made it a central philosophy and driving objective of the government. And again, as in climate change, I think it provides a model for the rest of the world to consider and to think about. So it is a very, very interesting, but I think a very welcome way of looking at well-being as an idea, which is an idea, in fact, that Australia has taken in, but you have taken it a step further than we have. So we will be looking very carefully at that.
Besides gaining in the form materially, in the form of education, building up the level of qualifications, do you think there's anything anything that Bhutan can learn from Australia or pick up from Australia instantly?
Oh gosh, instantly.
No, maybe not too instant, but maybe not like a distant.
I think the natural step forward after people are educated is how do you get them a job? And so a lot of that goes to what we call making people work ready. So we have put a lot of thought into this in Australia. How do you gain people the skills they need to use in the workplace, because a university degree doesn't always give you that. How do you gain the skills to establish a business? How do you gain the skills to contribute to the economy? And I think that is a very, very fruitful area for discussion between Australia and Bhutan going forward.
Is there anything else you'd like to talk about before we just...
No, I just have to say how very impressed I have been with the country, the people and your government, all very wise and very warm and generous people. I'm truly honoured to have this job, and I really look forward to the next few years and taking it forward.
We're flattered with your very kind words.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And on this note, we'd like to wrap up today's interview. That was the Australian ambassador to Bhutan, Ambassador Harinder Sidhu. I hope I'm not making that mistake at the end of the interview.
Beautifully done.
Ambassador Sidhu has been kind enough to give us a lot of details into the two countries' relations, the support area, especially in the education sector, and so on in the most likely sectors that the two countries would be working on. That's about it for today. Thank you once again for your time this evening. I know you have a busy schedule downstairs, and yet you found time on your first visit to talk to us.
You're very welcome. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. That's about it. Thank you.